Misija OSCE-a u Bosni i Hercegovini promijenila je način rada na rad od kuće u cilju zaštite javnog zdravlja i na temelju preporuka koje su izdale međunarodne i domaće zdravstvene institucije. Sa nama u nastavku je Kathleen Kavalec, šefica misije OSCE-a u Bosni i Hercegovini. Ms. Kavalec, thank you for joining us.
Thank you. Hvala puno.
Hvala vam. How has it been like in the past few weeks for you?
Well, like everyone else, the OSCE mission to Bosnia and Herzegovina has had to adapt to a telework environment and to find new ways to work together to achieve our goals, which is to support the democratic development of Bosnia and Herzegovina. I'm really proud of our mission staff. They adapted quickly to the need to stay home, and they've shown great discipline and integrity and respecting the measures put into place by BIH authorities. We all recognize that by respecting these measures, we're helping to protect the larger community, including the most vulnerable. We also have a great IT team that helped our mission, including all our 8 field offices, stay connected during this period. And we are working hard to share information. We're all learning how to use these online platforms, such as the one we're using today with you, and getting better every day. I hope you enjoy my virtual background here, since I'm working from home, but it can appear like I'm in the office. And for the first time in my career, I'm attending frequent virtual meetings practically every day with prime ministers, ministers, and other ambassadors. And it's so great that we can have these connections during this time. Personally, I'm doing more reading and continuing my studies of the local language. I'm using these platforms to stay in touch with friends around the world, including in the US, and probably spending too much time on the internet like everyone else. What I do miss is the chance to travel around Bosnia and Herzegovina. Before the pandemic, I traveled all over the country and I enjoyed meeting people and taking photos. I'm hopeful that I can do that again soon when the crisis passes. I think maybe the biggest challenge for all of us in the mission has been dealing with uncertainty and worry. I always try to think about the broader context. And even if while I'm worrying about my family back in the United States. And by the way, I loved the expression of solidarity that I saw a few nights ago when the Vijećnica was lit up in the colors of the American flag. You know, small gestures like that can mean a lot when you're in the middle of a pandemic like this one. In the mission, we're looking for positive stories and sharing those on social media because solidarity is so important. And there are so many people in this country who have volunteered and are doing things to help each other. We think what's most important right now is that we be here for each other, we help one another, and we show concern adapting to the circumstances. The most important thing, too, is that we all stay healthy, both individually and collectively.
Yes, definitely, because we're all in this together and we are so going to leave this situation all together. Tell me, how do you see the work of domestic institutions? Did we react well when it comes to fighting pandemic of coronavirus?
Well, of course, it's still early to know for sure, but on the whole, I think that the measures that were taken to limit the spread of infections appear to have been effective in Bosnia and Herzegovina. I think authorities were right to adopt restrictive measures relatively early in the crisis, and that has made a huge difference. The entire world is struggling with this pandemic, and every country, including Bosnia and Herzegovina, is trying to do their best within the capacities that they have. Of course, like many other countries, Bosnia and Herzegovina lacked critical medical equipment and had to try to acquire it quickly. I'm glad that the international community stepped forward to help with that and to provide equipment and advice. I think one of the biggest challenges for all countries has been how to organize the healthcare system to deal with testing and treatment of contagious individuals. And there have been efforts here to address those challenges, although, of course, there were some obvious problems, especially early on in the crisis. But stepping back, I think the most important thing is to recognize and to thank those working on the front lines of the crisis, those who have critical professions and are keeping the society functioning. These are medical professionals, the media, cashiers at the stores, cleaning staff, police officers, firefighters, and all of the other essential personnel who are doing their jobs in public places. We owe them a huge debt of gratitude. And I'm also been glad to see that the authorities in BIH, despite all the differences that you see and we have seen in the past, have been able to come together for the benefit of citizens. I hope the virus will persuade all politicians that the people and institutions in this country are stronger and more successful when they work together. I also want to commend the work on coordination by authorities at all levels, including the Ministries of Foreign Affairs, Security, and Defense. We're also glad to see that the politicians were able to come together to reach agreement on the IMF loan for BIH. Again, this shows that the needs for compromise and unity that have always existed are more critical than ever. In terms of what could be done and what's important to do going forward, more coordination on a centralized basis in terms of management, coordination of messages to the public, ensuring medical systems can cope, procurement of medical supplies and distribution of aid, all of that will be critical. It's also important not to forget the vulnerable groups in the society, such as victims of domestic violence, disabled persons, the Roma. We could also see some improvements perhaps in cooperation for people entering the country to make sure they're provided with quarantine orders efficiently and that quarantine accommodation does not provide a health risk. And that any limitations of human rights are strictly necessary and proportional. It's also important to make sure social welfare centers and safe houses and other secondary care institutions can continue to function safely. And I've been glad to see authorities focused on those issues as well. Unfortunately, for all of us, COVID-19 seems to be here to stay for a while. So we all have to figure out ways to live with it and to cooperate more effectively until there is a vaccine that has been deployed. And I think it's also important to thank citizens for their patience and solidarity in dealing with these measures. It's so important for all of us.
Mission also monitors the work of journalists, media, and their rights and freedoms, but are journalists protected enough in here? How do you assess their coverage of Corona in the last few weeks? First of all, the pandemic is affecting everyone, including journalists. And unfortunately, we've seen including dismissals of journalists for economic reasons. So we hope that BIH will adopt effective measures for stabilization of the economy that will include media workers. And all of us have a role to play to limit the spread of the virus, also by limiting the spread of disinformation and fake news. The media play a crucial role during this period, and of course, responsible reporting is really important. But at the same time, even more important, I think, is providing citizens with up-to-date information and to point out problems when they see them. And I think so far the media in this country have done a good job overall. I also want to express my sincere gratitude for all the journalists reporting on the front lines of this pandemic.
Journalists are also putting themselves at risk to bring important news to the public. So we at the OSCE mission to BIH wish you all good health and better times for you personally and for the media industry in its entirety.
Much attention has been drawn to the decree banning panic and disorder during the RS emergency. It is clear that urgent measures are crucial in the fight against the pandemic. However, is there an abuse and restriction of basic human rights and freedoms in this case?
Yeah, you're right. We pointed out, the OSCE pointed out the risk of potential violations of fundamental freedoms after Republika Srpska issued a decree which could restrict the media and journalists from reporting freely on the pandemic. On the 10th of April, the OSCE representative on media freedom, Harlem Desir, and I sent a letter to the president of Republika Srpska about the decree prohibiting incitement to panic and disorder during the state of emergency. In the letter, we expressed our understanding for the aim of tackling dissemination of false news that could pose a risk to public health or create panic. But we also pointed out the importance of ensuring the free flow of information and the importance of allowing the media to work free from pressure in order to provide essential information to the public, including on vital health measures. And we noted the risk that the decree could lead to censorship and self-censorship, as well as arbitrary penalties. And we expressed our concern that the decree didn't provide details on how the offenses would be determined or on what jurisprudence they were based. And we said that the best way to combat fake information is for the authorities to communicate transparently and frequently with the public. So we were glad yesterday when we saw the withdrawal of this decree in Republika Srpska. We think they made the right decision. Let me also say that we're closely following developments in the Federation in this regard, because there have been some municipalities adopting their own decisions on violating public peace and order by spreading false information and fake news. These are also problematic decisions in terms of legality, scope of implementation, and disproportionate penalties. We at the OSCE are prepared to provide expertise to help authorities address these issues and correct any measures that are inappropriate or unhelpful during this time. Another thing that we're working on is emphasizing the importance of providing citizens with timely and accurate information on all the decisions and measures taken at all levels of government by publishing those in the public media and on their websites of the institutions in a transparent and comprehensible manner. This is why we support and praise the most recent recommendation issued by the Ombudsman institution, calling for all BIH institutions to make such decisions public.
Much controversy has also been raised by the fact that the information about people unfortunately infected by the coronavirus has been released. Were there abuses in that segment as well? Yeah, I mean, this was another concern, and we issued a statement on the 26th of March in which we commended the decision of the Data Protection Agency of BIH in which they ordered the immediate removal of names and personal data of persons in self-isolation infected by coronavirus and called on authorities not to do this anymore in the future. Obviously, this publication of names like this raised concerns about the right to a private life, but it also put people at risk in terms of being stigmatized or even having their personal safety threatened. And even more important for the community, publishing names like that could discourage people from reporting their illness. And if that happens, then the virus would become more difficult to track.
and increase the risks to the public at large. So we support the decision by the Data Protection Agency.
Do you follow the pandemic education process? Have education ministries in our country responded adequately?
Yeah, we, the OSCE, were in touch with ministries of education and schools throughout BIH, and we believe they've reacted adequately to these circumstances. Again, like everyone else, they had to respond very quickly and maybe didn't have everything they needed at the start. But authorities were able to introduce TV lessons and online classes so that families could respect self-isolation requirements while also respecting the right of children to an education. So from what we saw, in most cases, the measures were introduced in a timely manner. Of course, shifting to distance learning overnight was a very demanding task for parents, teachers, and students alike. And it was a great collective effort to tackle all these challenges. Unfortunately, one problem has been that there are a number of children in this country that do not have access to the internet or to computers. And we have been encouraged to see efforts made by education authorities, parents, NGOs, businesses to overcome this challenge by donating equipment to make online classes possible. We want to thank everyone who has made this possible. And also, we remember that employers, including the OSCE mission, need to take into account the challenges involved for parents of small children. I've heard from many of my colleagues who still have small children how challenging it is to work from home and also monitor online instruction for your children. So this is another area where it's important to have solidarity and understanding and empathy for what people are going through.
Yes, we're all definitely adapting to these new circumstances that we're living in. Ms. Kathleen, these days there are numerous controversies over whether local elections should be canceled. What do you think about that?
Well, as we've seen in a lot of other countries, including my country, elections are difficult to organize during a pandemic. It's not just election day that's an issue, but it's all the preparatory work that goes on beforehand, such as printing the ballots, collecting signatures for candidates, allowing candidates to campaign. And, you know, it's very, very difficult to do all this when social distancing measures are in place. The most immediate problem I think there is in BIH right now about upcoming municipal elections is the lack of the adoption of a state budget. And we continue to call on authorities to adopt that budget because without it, the Central Electoral Commission doesn't have the financial resources to do things like pay for ballot paper and hire necessary staff. This should not be a reason to postpone the elections. But we did notice that current election law does not really have a provision for delay if necessary for this pandemic. So that's why we have welcomed the efforts by the Central Electoral Commission to propose an amendment that would allow for postponement of elections beyond 30 days if necessary due to the pandemic. I want to be clear that we're not saying the election should be delayed, but we believe that there needs to be, and in fact, it's important that preparations continue, but we agree that there needs to be some kind of provision should, you know, a few months from now, we still be in this situation of social distancing and limitations on contacts. We also want to highlight how important it is during this period to keep democratic processes working. So it's important both that we adopt the right measures to keep the democratic processes working, but that we be realistic and prepared for problems that are likely to crop up.
You've also mentioned citizens a few times while we were talking, so at the end, I'd like you to send them a message. What would it be?
I guess my message would be to please take care of yourselves and your community, to know that this will pass, and hopefully soon we will all be able to see each other again and be with our friends and family. We should be encouraged by all the positive examples of volunteers and people coming together to help each other on a daily basis. We at the OSCE mission are sharing those stories on our social media feeds. We believe that we're stronger together, and I hope that the country will come together in a way and come out of this stronger and more united than it was before. But my basic message is to everyone, please keep safe and stay at home.
Ms. Kavalec, thank you very much for your time. And of course, at the end, take care of yourself too. And I hope we will see you soon in our studio and talking face to face.
I would love to be back in your studio, and best wishes to all of you at N1. Thank you for the great work that you do every day. And I wish you all the best.
Thank you very much.